When we look at Latin America today, it's easy to see issues like poverty, the drug trade, and migration as separate problems. But they're not. They're actually all links in a single, powerful chain where each crisis directly fuels the next. Today, we're going to untangle this really complex story and see how these connections shape the entire region. So to really get our heads around this, let's zoom out for a second and look at the big picture. This map here shows the percentage of people living on less than $2 a day. And yeah, poverty is obviously a global issue, but you can see right away how certain regions, including Latin America, shown here in yellow and orange, are facing a huge challenge. This is really the backdrop for everything else we're going to talk about. And that's our first big idea. To really get what's happening in modern Latin America, you just can't look at these problems one by one. They're deeply, and I mean fundamentally, tangled together. And here's how that connection really works. It all starts with widespread poverty, right? Which means you have very few opportunities for good jobs, for education, for basic healthcare. For some people, that level of desperation makes the illegal drug trade feel like the only way out. For a whole lot of others, the only choice they feel they have is to migrate, usually north towards the US. And when you put it all together, these forces create this constant state of conflict and churn across the entire region. So let's start at the very beginning, the root of it all, the cycle of poverty. We've got to understand that this isn't just about not having money. It's a trap, and it's one that can hold families for generations. So just so we're all on the same page, what do we actually mean by poverty? Well, we're talking about the state of not being able to meet your most basic human needs. We're talking food, clothes, a safe roof over your head. It's a condition of just extreme daily struggle that has been a long-term reality for millions in Latin America. And check this out. Think about this number for a second. 1 out of every 5 people in Latin America lives in what's called chronic poverty. That's 20% of the whole population stuck in this persistent long-term state of just not having enough. And it's incredibly hard to break free from. Now, this map really visualizes that number, and you can see that the 1 in 5 average isn't spread out evenly at all. Those deeper shades of red, they show these intense pockets of poverty in Central America. We're talking countries like Guatemala and Honduras, and also parts of the Andean region. In those spots, the number of people in poverty can shoot past 40, 50, even 60%. It's staggering. And again, this isn't just an abstract statistic. It has a real, tangible effect on people's lives every single day. I mean, look at these numbers. The percentage of families who are either homeless or living in really poor quality housing. In Nicaragua, it's 78%. In Peru, 72%. And in Guatemala, 67%. That is the on-the-ground reality of this cycle. So what keeps this whole cycle spinning? Well, it's a mix of things that go way back in history and policy. You've got this long-standing, really unequal distribution of wealth, where a tiny elite controls most of the resources. Then you add in political instability, a serious lack of investment in what economists call human capital, which is basically the education, skills, and health of the people. And finally, rapid population growth that just puts a huge strain on food and housing. And this brings us to the next link in our chain. Because when you're trapped in this cycle, when you're facing this kind of overwhelming poverty, you are forced to make some truly desperate choices. I mean, really think about that question. It's what millions of people are asking themselves every single day. When the normal economy, the legal jobs offer you no way out, what do? How do you survive? How do you feed your family? And what we see is that 2 major paths tend to emerge from all this desperation. Path 1, the illegal drug trade. It's dangerous for sure, but it can be a lucrative way for some to make a living. The second, and much more common path, is migration, packing up and leaving home to find better opportunities somewhere else. And for most, the United States is that destination. So let's take a closer look at that first path, because the choice to get into the drug trade has sparked this decades-long conflict that we all know as the war on drugs. The geographic heart of this conflict is right here, in the Andean region of South America, countries like Colombia, Peru, and Bolivia. This is where many small, impoverished farmers grow coca plants, the raw ingredient for cocaine, often just because it's the only way they can escape crushing poverty. This chart just gives you a sense of the sheer scale of the challenge authorities are up against. That huge light blue area shows the estimated total opium production in Latin America from 1998 to 2014. And those tiny colored bars at the bottom, that's how much was actually seized. The gap between what's being made and what's being caught is, well, it's immense. It shows you just how tough this trade is to shut down. So, why is it so hard? Well, for one, the trade is run by incredibly powerful and violent cartels. Think criminal empires like the Sinaloa cartel in Mexico or the old Medellin cartel in Colombia. Then there's massive corruption within some governments, which is a huge roadblock. The drug operations are also hidden away in these vast rural areas that are really hard to police. And even when you do manage to shut one down, the cartels just pack up and move to another area.
So here's the crucial, kind of tragic irony in all this. The war on drugs hasn't really been successful. In fact, a lot of the time it's actually made things worse. It's led to more violence and more conflict, which doesn't just slow down economic development, it becomes yet another powerful reason for people to flee their homes.
Okay, so that brings us to the second path, the journey taken by millions of people who just see no other way out, migration. For them, leaving home is the only option left on the table for a better life. And if you look at the reasons people leave, it's a direct reflection of all the problems we've just been talking about. They're desperately trying to escape that poverty cycle. They're running from the exact violence that's been amped up by the drug war. And ultimately, they're searching for the basic opportunities, jobs, education, safety that they just can't find back home. But this creates another one of those vicious cycles. Because as skilled, ambitious people leave, their home countries lose a really vital part of their workforce. It's a phenomenon people call a brain drain, and it makes it even harder for those nations to build up their own economies, which just reinforces the very problems that are pushing people to leave in the first place. And of course, all of this has sparked a major, ongoing debate in the United States. Our source material really breaks it down into two main viewpoints. On one side of the conversation, you have a call for stronger borders and stricter laws for undocumented immigrants. And on the other side, you have a call for a more sympathetic approach, with people pointing out that the U.S. economy often benefits from the skilled labor that immigrants bring. Which brings us right back to our central idea of a chain. If poverty leads to the drug trade, and both of those things lead to migration, is there any way to actually break that chain? Well, the source material does offer a glimmer of hope. In places that have actually seen some real improvements, like Brazil and Mexico, that progress has been tied to one key factor: investing in education. Take Brazil's Bolsa Familia program, for example. It gives financial aid to poor families on the condition that they keep their kids in school. And it's been credited with helping to cut down on both poverty and inequality. By developing that human capital, these countries are starting to create more opportunities right there at home. And that leaves us with one last big question. We've seen exactly how poverty drives these massive crises. And the evidence seems to suggest that the solution isn't just about fighting the symptoms, the drugs and the migration, but about going after the root cause. So, what truly drives the solution? Maybe, just maybe, it's about creating opportunity where right now there is none.